I know it's a little bit noisy this week, but we're going to touch base again with the Honda HRV, but this time it's the hybrid. Now, I was pretty unkind about the base model. This comes in a base model petrol only and two HEV models or hybrid electric vehicle models, which Honda calls HEV, as if there was any other kind. It's got a bit more power, but I'll get onto that in a minute. But I was also, because it drives better, more kindly disposed to its foibles. I still don't like that grille, that looks like Mrs. Mangle's Venetians. On the top model at least, the headlights are adaptive LED, but it's from the side. Somehow or other this just looks a little bit awkward, especially that back door. It doesn't have any of the cuteness that the previous model used to have, but it still has some of the things from the previous model that I liked. For example, a concealed rear door handle to a very spacious rear. And that's one of the reasons that I've got the engine on, is to keep the noise out and the cool in. So I've got the engine running. But of course this is a hybrid vehicle, which means that at least part of it is running on the battery. There's some vents and USB-Cs in this top model in the back, and bags of space. And this cute little fold-down armrest with a couple of cup holders. And I do like the fact that we've got some touch lights. I'm not going to lie, getting out is a different story altogether, because that is really low. Around the back, I think this has been a little bit more successful. You can see the HEV badge. This is a kick to open electric tailgate, but because I've got the car on, that function won't work. And it opens up to a reasonably generous boot with some 60-40 split rear seats. There's a couple of lights in the back, but no plugs or anything of that kind. There are a lot of aspects of the front of the cabin that I quite like, and because this drives a little bit better than the petrol version, I'm more kindly disposed to its foibles. The power button is over yonder. There's a not very impressive dash. It's a little bit short of what the competition has. For example, there's no head-up display like you get in Toyota's Yaris Cross, which is the equivalent to this. Yaris Cross, for a little bit more than this, can come in a four-wheel drive, or at least all-wheel drive. The center screen, this is much better than the one we had in the Civic last week, which you'll remember I simply couldn't get to work. It had Google built in and the Google didn't work. Got a couple of zones of climate control, a little cubby hole, a USB 3 and USB-C, and the CVT automatic gear shifter. Behind that is drive mode, downhill descent, electric park brake, and of course, brake hold. The headlights, as I said previously, they are adaptive. The plastic feels quite nice here, but up top is very scratchy. And the other thing is, you'll notice how high I'm sitting. I suspect the battery for the hybrid is under the driver's seat, because this is a very long way off the ground and it's down as low as I can get, and there's only that much space above my head. The vents present a really strong horizontal line. The one thing I would say about some of the softer, particularly down here on the side of the console, an area that is going to get bashed about, it's a very thin layer of vinyl over foam rubber. And unfortunately, that is really prone to damage, and it's difficult, or you can't fix it, you've got to replace it. Because this is a hybrid, I've left this car running the whole time, and it meant that I could leave the air conditioning running, and it kept the cabin nice and cool. So in that sense at least, it's very much like an EV. But I want to explain a couple of the differences between a hybrid and an EV, a pure EV. Both are better than petrol engines, a pure petrol engine car by a long shot. Like an EV, this has got regenerative braking. The thing about having a torsion bar rear end, I'm not going to tell you all about it, you can Google that yourself, is that it does feel a little choppy in corners. Yesterday on my favourite pie in the sky road, it definitely felt that it could handle those corners, which are now 70, but put this into sport, so this is as good as it gets. Now you'll hear the ratio changes in the transmission. CVTs don't have ratios normally. They just continually vary, which is why it's called a continually variable transmission. But the other thing is that you can vary that one mode of regenerative braking with the paddles up on the steering wheel. And it's got 4 steps, from almost none to 4. I'm now on the highway, so I've turned the smart steering on and I'm just going to press set. Oh, cannot shift to drive. Okay, so there you go. It's telling me I had to shift to drive. Now I set. Okay, so I'm out of regenerative braking mode. Lovely. Steering up system can be a little bit overly sensitive. Even if I'm going the way the lines tell me to go, the car tells me that it needs steering input. So I have to give the wheel a little jiggle. But it's not unusual. A lot of brands do it. Thankfully, Honda have done away now with all of their models that had the side view system. They now all have blind spot monitor, which of course they need to get maximum ratings in NCAP. On the highway like this, the HRV is reasonably smooth, fairly quiet. I can't hear any wind noise. And even at 110 yesterday, I could hear hardly anything outside at all. Now you'll remember the base model I felt was a little bit, how's your father? It just wasn't a pleasant drive. Everything about that seems to have been ironed out. The awful mushy CVT is smooth. See, it's got lane departure. A warning just came up, thankfully a silent one, for lane departure, but it put me in the position where it was departing the lane, and it wasn't really departing the lane. So the drive experience in this top-of-the-line HRV has been much, much better than the drive experience in the bottom of the range. Much better. And it's made me feel better about the cabin, and it's made me feel better about being in the car. There are still some inbuilt problems, of course. This is still a 4-seater, and that's because the middle seat in the back doesn't have a seat belt. It wasn't thought sufficiently important for the only right-hand drive market to have the extra engineering required to put a central position in. The HRV has lived up to expectations as far as economy is concerned. The economy is 5.2 litres per 100 kilometres. That's a little bit up on the 4.2 litres per 100 kilometres that's promised in the brochure. This does also have Q Assist, which I used yesterday in the traffic. Unfortunately, Q Assist does with Honda what it does with all brands, and that is the car is fairly slow to respond, and that does mean cars will jump in front of you. So to wrap up, HRV HEV is in direct competition with Toyota's Yaris Cross, and the Yaris Cross does have extra features, the head-up display and all-wheel drive, for around the same money-ish. There are $1,000 difference or thereabouts. This is a city car. It's based on Jazz, a city car. So, is it value for money? Well, when Yaris Cross came out, I was pretty shocked at the price, to be honest. I thought that was an awful lot of money. When this came out, it was the same. It's an awful lot of money. And it drives like Toyota's hybrids do. It will run briefly in electric-only mode. I want to also point out the difference between a hybrid battery and an electric vehicle battery. The electric vehicle battery, if it's a factory electric vehicle, will usually be under the floor and takes up the entire space. Well, the box takes up the entire space, even if it's not full of batteries. The hybrids are usually between 1.4 and 1.9 kilowatt hours. And the biggest HEV battery is about 100 kilowatt hours. So you can see that there's a huge difference. This is about maybe the size of a shoebox, large shoebox. And that's all this week from Honda's eHEV. It's the top of the line version and I think is vastly improved on the base model. If you've liked the video, hit like and subscribe and don't forget to leave a comment.